Hello everyone, it's Chantel from Crochet, and welcome to this tutorial on how to crochet a yarn cat. So the materials that you'll need include a 4mm crochet hook, a darning or sewing needle, a stitch marker, I personally use a bobby pin, some scissors, 12mm safety eyes, a pink safety nose, chunky yarn in the color that you would like your yarn to be for your yarn cat, and chunky yarn in the color that you would like your cat to be. You will also need some polyfill stuffing. The abbreviations and terminology you will need to know include a single crochet, increase, decrease, magic ring, chain, slip stitch, working in the back loop only, and fastening off. We will start by making the yarn ball for the cat. To do this, start off with a magic ring. I like to close off my magic rings before working single crochets into them, as I find this prevents the yarn from snapping. And for row 1, simply do 6 single crochets into the magic ring. And this is what your work should look like. For row 2, we will simply be doing 6 increases around until we have a total of 12 stitches. Just a reminder that an increase is working 2 single crochets into the same stitch. And this is what your work should look like. For row 3, we will be increasing to 18 stitches around. And to do this, we will do a single crochet and then an increase for a total of 6 times. And this is what your work should look like. For row 4, we will be increasing to 24 stitches around. To do this, we will do 2 single crochets and then an increase for a total of 6 times. And this is what your work should look like. This will be our last row of increasing. So for row 5, we will do 3 single crochets and then an increase for a total of 6 times. And this is what your work should look like. For row 6, we will be working in the back loop only, and we will simply be single crocheting around. You should therefore have a total of 30 stitches by the end of the row. And this is what your work should look like. I will now do the next 6 rows off camera, where you will simply be following the same pattern of single crocheting in the back loop only. And this is what your work should look like. There should be numerous lines across your work to signify the strands of yarn. We are now going to start closing off the yarn ball. For this row, we will be working 15 decreases into the back loops only. Therefore, at the end of the row, you should have a total of 15 stitches. And this is what your work should look like. We are now going to begin stuffing the yarn ball. Be sure to not overstuff your yarn ball, as you want the top and bottom to lay flat. I like to squish the yarn ball from the outside to ensure that it is being shaped correctly. And this is what it should look like. We are now going to do the last row of decreasing. For this row, we will simply do 7 decreases around and then a single crochet. By the end of the row, you should have a total of 8 stitches. You do not need to work in the back loop for this row. And to finish off, we will slip stitch into the next stitch and cut a tail for sewing the opening closed. So, taking your darning or sewing needle, attach the yarn onto the needle and weave through the front loops only of the remaining 8 stitches. Once you have completed this, pull the opening closed and tie a simple knot and weave in your ends. And this is what your yarn ball should look like. We are now going to get started on the arms and legs of the cat. The arms and legs follow the same pattern. So, using your chosen color for your cat, create a magic ring, and for the first round, simply do 6 single crochets into the magic ring. And this is what your work should look like. For row 2, do a single crochet and then an increase for a total of 3 times. By the end of the row, you should have a total of 9 stitches. And this is what your work should look like. For the next 2 rows, you will simply single crochet around, having a total of 9 single crochets per row. To finish off, simply slip stitch into the next stitch and leave a long tail for sewing. I am now going to go off camera and make another 3 legs for the cat. By the end, you should have a total of 4 legs. I have now completed my 4 legs for my cat, and we will now get started on making the head. Once again, taking your chosen cat color, we will start off with a magic ring. We will start by creating the ears of the cat before working on the head. So to make the ears, simply do 6 single crochets into the magic ring. And once you have completed that, do 6 single crochets for row 2. And this is what your work should look like. To fasten off, slip stitch into the next stitch, but there is no need to leave a long tail for sewing. I am now going to quickly make the second ear, but I will not be fastening off for this one. So once again, doing 6 single crochets into the magic ring, and then for row 2, doing 6 single crochets around. We are now going to chain 3 after completing round 2. Now, grab your first ear that you made and single crochet into one of the stitches to attach the 2 ears. That single crochet will be counted as the first stitch of the row. So place your stitch marker there. We are now going to do 5 single crochets around the rest of the ear. Now, on one side of the chain 3 that you created, do 3 single crochets across. Once you have completed the 3 single crochets, you will then do 6 single crochets around the second ear that you made. We are now back again at the chain 3, and in the other side of the chain we are going to do 3 single crochets across. And that is the end of the row. For this next row, we are going to increase to 24 stitches around. To do that, work 2 single crochets and then an increase for a total of 6 times. And this is what your work should look like. I am now going to do the next 4 rows off camera, as it is simply working single crochets into each row. And this is what your work should look like once you have completed the 4 rounds of single crochet. For the last row of the head, we are going to be decreasing to 18 stitches around. To do that, simply work 2 single crochets and then a decrease for a total of 6 times. And this is what the head should look like. To fasten off, simply slip stitch into the next stitch and leave a long tail for sewing. We are now going to attach the eyes. Between rows 6 and 7, position the safety eyes 6 stitches apart. The eyes should be in line with the ears. Now, grab your pink safety nose, and once again, between rows 6 and 7, insert the nose, making sure that it is equally spaced between both eyes. I am now going to put the backings on the eyes. And this is what the cat head should look like. We are now going to quickly stuff the head. And once you have completed stuffing the head, you are then going to get on to sewing it to the yarn ball. The head of the cat will be sewn on between rows 3 and 4 of the yarn ball. Once you have completed sewing on the head, you will sew on the arms and legs. The arms should be sewn on across rows 6 and 7 on either side of the body, being sure that they are in line with the head. The legs will be sewn on across rows 13 and 14 of the yarn ball. This is what your work should look like once you have sewn on the head. Just a reminder that you should position the arms and legs to be in line with the head. I am now going to sew them on off camera. The second last thing to add to your yarn cat is the tail. To make the tail, simply chain 7, and then starting in the second chain from the hook, do 6 single crochets down the chain. Then fasten off and leave a tail for sewing. This is what your yarn cat should look like so far. And you will be positioning the tail on the back of the yarn cat. Sew the tail onto row 9 of the yarn ball, and then weave in your ends. And this is what your yarn cat should look like so far. We are now going to add the final detail of wrapping yarn around the yarn cat. So, taking your yarn ball color, pull the yarn tight across the chest, and then hold the yarn in place. I will be using a bobby pin to position it in place, but you may just use your hands. Then for this part, wrap yarn around the body in an irregular manner. And once you have finished wrapping the yarn around, detach the beginning strand and tie a knot to secure. Cut off the excess and weave the tails in. And this is what your finished yarn cat should look like. I also created another yarn cat using a yarn weight one size bigger than the one I used in this video and using a 5mm crochet hook. Just a reminder that I post a free pattern every Friday for my series called Free Pattern Fridays. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below and subscribe if you'd like to see more content such as this.